This is episode 31, and today we're interviewing Lisbet Stolberg, who is a very interesting CMO. She just left her job literally 2 days ago, and she's starting a new job tomorrow. And I really want to do this podcast where she's in between jobs, because what are the challenges when you're starting a new job? So we talk about that, and we also talk about, Lisbet and I have a common background in the film business. We talk about how using some of those marketing tools, how they translate into any business. And then we talk about her new job, which is to sell houses. So stay tuned for a great episode.
The numbers aren't there, you're not going to be able to make any stories.
Lisbet Stolberg, so good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you. Now, you are in a very peculiar situation because you are literally in between jobs. You start a new job as a CMO tomorrow, but as today of this recording, you have left the old company last week before the weekend, and you are starting tomorrow. So you have like 3 days where you are in no man's land. So today we're going to have a discussion about changing jobs, changing businesses, changing what we do and how the things we go in life. So let's start about who are you, Lisbet?
That's a very good question, Thomas. I ask myself every morning, who am I? I'm a mother, sister, daughter, friend, but I'm a marketeer professionally.
Good. And you and I have known each other for a long time because you used to be in the film business and I used to be in the film business. So we go a little bit way back to then, and you did distribution and you helped market films. So, and after that you had several other companies, but the job you just left, you were at a book publisher. What's the difference between promoting a film and promoting a book? Is that the same or is it completely different?
It's actually very similar. But there are definitely some differences in how the industries work, because you can say, I think the film industry is extremely accomplished in sort of brand building and working with what I define as sort of the pre-hype phase of a project and a film, in a different way than that I have experienced the sort of publishing industry doing it. There's a lot to learn, actually, for the publishing industry, looking more towards the film industry. And that's, of course, what I've been trying to work with in the company I have been with.
When you were in the film business, which was a while ago, there was this almost pre-social media. Back then, you were hyping a film. You were, trailers, posters. That was sort of it, right?
That you make it sound so simple, Thomas.
Before
Was that
Facebook,
really it?
before social media, before Google, yes. Weren't life very simple?
Yeah, that's what we did. I guess what I think would be really interesting to talk about regarding the film industry is the way you work on a project. Because when a project is born, the idea of a film, you gather so many different competencies and put them together in a room. You have maybe just an idea of a story you would love to make, and then you start to sit down and discuss how could we develop this idea, who would be the right persons to attach to the project, a director, a writer, actors, and I think this whole way of thinking go-to-market strategy very, very early on is something that they're very good at in some industries, but also I have experienced after I left the film industry that this is a knowledge I have been able to bring in to the companies I have been in, because it's typically not as, I don't know, in the film industry, for us, I think, who's worked there, it's just, this is how we do it. This is how we work together. But I think a lot of even, modern organizations, they are not as mature, actually, in working in teams and sort of this very project-oriented way of working. And I think in that sense, I think people coming out of the film industry are quite strong in thinking organizational structure and team structures, which are typically very helpful today, where we don't really succeed if we don't know how to work together as teams in our companies.
That's very interesting. We're saying that. So you said because you were part of the pre-planning process, before the actual production, you're part of the marketing is already a part of it before the film is even conceived, before the film is even shot. And in other industries, you only start the marketing when the product is ready, when the book is about to be published. Is that so? Marketing comes in at a later angle, and you feel it's harder when the marketing comes in later, or?
Yes, definitely. I think it's crucial that marketing is plays a big part in developing the project, and also that you also have enough time to actually create the whole sort of branding and campaign around the product in due time. And I think one of the other strengths of doing it when you work with a film is that they're so good at using press, the whole PR part of launching a film. I mean, it plays a huge role, but I think PR is maybe a little, I don't know if it's underestimated or it's just not thought at. You don't think about PR in other companies the way you do when you do a film. I mean, just now, there's just been the Cannes Film Festival. And we know, Thomas, that usually at the festivals, that's where you start announcing new projects. Because you have the world press there. There's a lot of attention. So if you bring a director, you fly down a director and a few lead actors, you can really have a huge announcement. And there's not, they haven't filmed 1 minute yet. It's just saying, when we're going to start doing this project, and actually you can maybe even close your financing.
Yeah, so often they don't have the financing, they're just pitching the idea.
Maybe the financing isn't even there.
Maybe it will never be there, but that's a different story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's also a great way to break, and start having audiences anticipate this film that's going to come out in 2 years, in 3 years. And that just tells me something about how important it is to work with, what I define as the pre-hype phase. It can be a very, very long phase where you talk about, you brand build, you create the sort of anticipation with your audience before you launch your product. And it usually just creates a much better result when you have that time. So for me, that has been a little different in the publishing industry, because usually we don't work with projects the same way. I mean, we don't spend as much time in the developing process. I mean, maybe it's also because a film is such a big investment.
And team effort. One man cannot
team
make a
effort,
film. Yeah.
And you have to really, you have the opening weekend is crucial for the success. So there's so much risk in creating a film. Whereas maybe writing a book, it's a different process. It's typically one author and an editor working together very closely. And then, the risks are lower. And I just think it's sort of, maybe that's one of the reasons why the industry don't work exactly the same way.
And how have you managed when you were at Gyldendal, the company you literally just left a couple of days ago? How did you manage to take this knowledge from the film industry and bring it into the book publishing? How did that affect it? How did you change that?
First of all, I've helped create a different organizational structure where we started working in teams. So we created a commercial team that was connected to an editorial brand. It could be nonfiction, fiction, or our sort of children and youth brand. So each editorial department had their own commercial team supporting them. And the commercial team would then consist of somebody from marketing, sales, press, and also our group agency selling our international rights. So they would discuss projects already when there were still ideas.
Okay, so you took the same film approach.
Exactly.
Where we, already at this stage, we start the marketing, we start the hype, we start the building of what this can turn into. Okay.
Exactly. And we start also agreeing internally on what kind of project is this, what kind of scope does it have, what kind of potential does it have, and what does that mean for the way we're going to work with it.
Interesting. And how did the book publishing industry respond to these changes?
Very well, I think, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I think everybody has agreed that it's a really great way of working. And it's a great way to sort of align internally. So we all agree on the scope and potential of the projects that are being what's that called? That we decide to do. Yes, exactly. And it's created a great a dialogue that can start very early on, which is a great thing.
And so the author is also part of that whole process and gets to approve and see what's going on behind the scenes, not in terms of course, how the book is written, but in terms of how the sausage gets made on the marketing angle.
Yes. I mean, we always create sort of collaborative sort of presentation for the author on how we're going to work with the book in the different sort of special departments. You know, how do we create the best sales strategy, marketing strategy, and press strategy that will support each other.
And the authors were okay with these changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think they just experienced this becoming, you know, by actually teaming up and working more closely together, that it just became more sort of professional and, you know, just, I think they just felt they were in sort of very good professional hands.
So they were not a lone person sitting somewhere writing all by themselves. There was a whole team trying to help them.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Since you just stopped at the publisher literally last week, how does one promote a book these days? If we talk from a marketing perspective, you start the early hype. How do you build it up? Do you use social media? Do you go through the press? How do you have a landing page for it? Do you have a special Facebook page for it? How do you, in this day and age, how do you market a book?
Really depends on the book.
Yeah. Okay.
Just as it also depends on depends on what product you work with, really. I mean, but if you work with a book that has, you know, a big potential, and maybe a national book with a national author, so that then it's easier to get access to the press. And I think just as with films, the press is crucial for anything that is, you know, any culturally related product is really depending on press coverage. It's such a big driver and just super important that you do a great press effort. Then we worked a lot with our sort of own channels at Gyldendal, and we've really focused on creating great content, doing, you know, portraits of the authors, maybe in their homes, where they're telling about the stories, because, you know, typically many stories, they come from also a very personal place. So being able to move into sort of sometimes a more personal space with them has been very interesting. And this content usually travels really well on social media, especially Facebook can really drive awareness and create huge reach. I mean, I think we've had extraordinary success on our Facebook channels with many of our own content productions. And then you can say for the publishing industry, we also rely a lot on our retail partners, and they also have very, very strong channels. So providing them with, you know, great materials, you know, photos, text, SoMe content is just super important, so they can activate it in their channels. And then I think we also use traditional media like, addressable TV, print, outdoor, depending on the campaign. But press and SoMe is just super important.
And what's the most challenging area when you were in the publishing industry? What was the place where it was most challenging to get the word out or the message out about the book?
I think sometimes it's been really hard working with the international authors. Even if we had access to them, it was really hard sometimes to have the same attention from the press as you would have had with an international director or actor, actress. In that sense, that part of the industry is a little more challenged, I think, in getting as much attention as film. Unfortunately, because some of these authors are the ones who then later on, have provided the stories that then become films.
The film.
So that's a little unfair, actually. I think that has been. I think that has sometimes been the hardest part, actually, compared to working with film.
Changing different businesses, and now you're starting a new job tomorrow, and you're also going to change business again, different business background. And obviously you don't know because you haven't started yet, but what do you think you can take with you from a marketing angle into your new job?
I think this whole way of working collaboratively is very, very important for me. I think in a way it's sometimes funny having a title as CMO because the way I see it, there are many marketeers within a company. I mean, everybody who has a touch point that connects them with the audience or customer is a marketeer, in my opinion. So I think in that sense, sometimes when I was head of distribution, it was kind of easy because I had both sales, PR, and marketing as my responsibility. Now when I work as a CMO, I sort of depend on having a great collaboration with head of sales or the whole sales department or a head of a customer service so that we can actually align and connect our whole approach to our customers together. And in that sense, I still think I keep sort of using what I've learned from the film industry about working together, many different types of stakeholders with many different sort of ideas and approaches and sort of backgrounds. How do you do that? How do you create a room where everybody can feel that they're part of the same strategy and we understand our goals and that we're willing to figure out how to reach them in the best possible way? And that can also mean that, if you have to divide budgets and stuff, you have to look at, who needs this the most or, which department will actually benefit the most from maybe having more budget. Maybe that's not my department, but that's fair enough. So collaboratively working together is really important to me.
Now, again, you're starting tomorrow. It's going to be a new day and stuff like that. But how do you, and that's interesting because CMOs, they come in, they typically place 1, 2, 3 years, and then they go to the next place, and then they get hired by someone else, and they do this tour, this carousel of different jobs. What's the challenge of starting a new job in a company that you haven't started at yet? What are your concerns? What are your worries? And, how are you going to affect, and how much effect can you have on the marketing? Again, you haven't started yet, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I really have no worries or concerns at all. I'm a very optimistic person. So, well, I'm just super excited. I mean, I think, it's such a joy being able to move into a different industry and just, open up and learn a lot about how do you do things and what works and what are the challenges and what's the strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. And then, being allowed to sort of look at how are we doing things now and trying to come up with a plan on how to succeed. And sometimes you find out that you have to make a lot of changes, and sometimes you will find out that you should just build on whatever is already there because it works really well. And that I have to start figuring out within the next few months at my new company, what the state of the nation is. But to me, it's been really just fun and a great learning process for me to change industries and to sit down with super talented colleagues, new colleagues, and learn from them. So I think that whole learning process is actually what has made me sometimes jump off the cliff and try something completely different with no fear.
With no fear. I love that. That's good. Tomorrow you're starting a job at a company where you're selling houses. Is that correct? They're building houses. So it's a little more investment than buying a movie ticket or buying a book. You're buying, for many people, it's a life savings to go in and then buying a house. What do you think? And again, you haven't started yet, but what do you think is going to be the challenges there?
Well, I think as you pinpoint, it's a completely different sort of customer journey. It's much more complex. And it really, there are really some people that are very important, and those are the whole sales department and I don't know what they're called in English, but the ones that actually take care of the whole building process, and who's the main, the builders, but sort of the site manager, the one who actually makes sure that the people buying a house, they receive a great house that has been built.
What is that called? Saying you got to help me.
Yeah, something like that.
Foreman. He's giving me a thumbs up. Yeah,
correctly. I mean, these people, they are, at the forefront working with the clients. It's a very long client relationship over many, many months. And even if you hand over the keys, you still have a responsibility as a builder for quite a while after you've done that. Exactly. So, this whole thing about quality and reassuring that things have been done right is very important, and I'm just very excited about working together with them because they have so much customer insight that that we can use in marketing. So this whole dialogue with them about what the foreman, the salespeople, what kind of feedback do they get from clients? What do the clients wish? What kind of trends are they hearing, seeing in the market? This is something that's going to be very important to tap into and connect with them and sort of transform it into, and so it becomes part of our whole marketing.
I think you can find a lot of great content from those foremen. I think there's a lot of stuff there, but let me ask you the few questions. A lot of stuff there. Yes, yeah. Exactly. You can use and go out and spread, because if they're built with care and love and quality, that's going to show through in the content. So when you start a new company, as you are tomorrow, what are you analyzing? In the first meetings? Obviously, you're going to go around and say hi to everyone. And I just find it so fascinating that you're in between jobs. So that's why I really want to talk to you before you start. And maybe we should have a follow-up in 3 months' time to see how it's going. But when you go in after you made a rounds and met everyone, what's the first things you want to see from an analytical point of view? I mean, sales, the process, where are you in terms of discovery? Because it's a business you have not been in before.
Well, of course, I'm very keen to see the business plans both the short-term, long-term, where we're at right now, sort of in the current year and the next 3-5 years. And then, of course, assess the performance we're having in the marketing department. How does that align with these strategic plans? And are we sort of on target? Because you can say, if we're on target, maybe I can take sort of a really deep breath and work with a more long-term plan. And if we're not on target, it's a different story. and then we probably have to adjust and look at what could maybe be adjusted, or what should we try and develop different approaches to. So I think that's the very first phase for me.
Good. So again, without really revealing too much, and tell me if I'm asking questions I shouldn't ask, but in the whole interview process, I'm sure you had multiple interviews with them. How much were they revealing at that time? Because you're still sort of dating, but you still get to know each other in the interview phase. They're trying to get to know you, and you try to get to know them. How much are they revealing from their playbook? Or have they been open about that? Or is it first tomorrow you're going to discover everything?
Well, I think I have a pretty good idea of sort of the business goals, and I think you can understand a lot and learn a lot about a company just from reading their annual reports. It's a great place to start, so I think I have a pretty good idea. But of course, it's not till tomorrow I start looking much deeper into State of the Nation.
If we go a little bit back to the book publisher and the one you just left, you mentioned before that it was really, really key that you use the press as a marketing angle to get the story out there, and of course some social media. Which campaigns were you the most proud of at Gyldendal, and why did they work in your opinion?
I think it's really hard to pinpoint one campaign, because I think to me it's been more about a way of working over the past 2-3 years. I mean, it's been a very volatile time with Corona, like a pandemic. How often does that happen when you start in a new job? And it's been like that for everybody. But I'm just very proud of the way we managed to really come together as a team. And I mean, we worked day and night. I felt during Corona, I didn't have one day off because all of a sudden people actually had time to read and also to start, listening to books. And I think we really managed to use that opportunity together and work really hard together in bringing creating very, very strong content with our authors. I mean, we created sort of a daily author show that we transmitted live, and then we created a streaming channel, which was a very, I think it was a quite unique initiative, just like born overnight. But it worked really well for us, and that's where we actually learned this whole thing about how strong content we were able to produce ourselves, and the reach it could actually receive in just through our own channels, which was great. So I think that's a result I'm actually quite proud of, like how the whole team just came together and worked together. I mean, just in a fantastic way. One more thing I'm proud of, though, is that last year we had the best-selling physical books on the big Danish online bookstore called Saxo. And it's a non-fiction book about women in history that's been overseen. And we did better than, some of the biggest crime writers in Denmark. And that I think is a very, very beautiful result.
Great. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
If you, as a CMO, what are 3 things you wish somebody had taught you before you start as a CMO? What's 3 things with advice that you wish someone had told you that you had to figure out yourself?
Maybe how complex it is working as a CMO, because it really, really is. And I think some people think, being a CMO is about being creative, and you do these campaigns and you work with exciting ad agencies it's all about storytelling, and I think the whole thing about how big part of the business marketing is and has to be is sometimes overlooked. And I think also actually coming from, with my background from sort of the film industry and publishing, even more so, people are thinking that, oh, it's just, you just sell stories, and sort of, it seems like it's lightweight,
Yeah.
And it's not really. I mean, you can say selling a film or selling a book is also a very complex process, and it's business. I mean, it's no different from the sort of the more sort of, I don't know, other industries like finance or medical, or it just seems like you're a bit of a little more a hardcore CMO type if you work in sort of the medical or the finance industry, and I think maybe it's kind of overlooked sometimes that having worked with culture is also it's also business. I mean, we're not doing it just for fun or because we're all philanthropists, and I mean, we're also a little bit philanthropists, but I think that's just interesting,
What's most important to you? The content, the story, or the numbers?
Definitely the numbers, because
Yeah.
if the numbers aren't there, you're not going to be able to make any stories.
So the numbers facilitate the story, or the story will bring the numbers?
Well, you have to have a good story in order to bring in the good numbers. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's your job, isn't it? It is to be able to foresee, hopefully, and have enough knowledge to know what kind of story/product will work in the marketplace and will actually have an audience or have customers. And I always say, at the end of the day, as a marketeer, you can do so much. I mean, you can create awareness, and you can also create some desire. But when the product or the story meets its audience, it sort of has to stand by itself. And if it doesn't, there will be no word of mouth, and the customers won't, come back. They won't recommend it. And if that's the case, then you just can't keep marketing something that doesn't work.
Do you think it's too complex? I mean, there's too many options as a marketing. I mean, you can go, let's go Facebook. Let's go press. Let's go a poster. No, let's make some great content. Let's have a Snapchat. Let's have a story on Instagram. Is there too many choices, and is this too overwhelming, or do you just go one by one and try it out? Or what's your feeling about the multiple channels and opportunities to spend money and to test things out?
I think you have to be very good at making choices. And you have to know your target group, and you have to prioritize which channels are the most important in order to reach this target group. Because you can definitely get so many channels going, and it just takes a lot of effort to do one channel well. I mean, if you just look at owned media, a LinkedIn profile or a TikTok profile or your Facebook, they're completely different, and they need different content. So if you don't have the resources to actually create the right content for them, it's probably better to choose which one is the most important for us, and then just focus. And that focus can be hard to explain sometimes, but I think that's what we all have to do, because there are so many channels we need to look at and work with, and we can't do them all perfectly, maybe.
So we talked a little bit about coming into a new company and analyzing, and you mentioned business plans. What are the goals for target? Are we on target? Are we behind? But whenever you enter a new business, whether it's film, whether it's publishing, whether it's selling houses, how do you analyze? I mean, you mentioned the target group before. Obviously, there's a difference between someone who's buying a book, and there's a difference between someone buying a couple buying a house, or a person buying a house. But how do you analyze that information through? What tools are you using? What software are you using? Or is it just talking to everyone? What's your progress? What's your what's your program, so to see?
Well, it depends on what data is available. I think there will be a lot of data that will be very interesting to look at. Like, what are the best-selling houses at the moment? What types of houses are we selling in which areas of Denmark? I'm sure that is different also. I would love to talk to a lot of people internally, of course, in the sales department, customer service, sort of the building managers. And then, of course, I would love to talk to some of our clients to see what are their experience and what has been sort of, the best practice, and where do they see potentially ways we could improve the communication to them, during this very, very long customer journey process that we have. So there will be a lot of data crunching and also a lot of qualitative data, just gathering and talking to people.
And will you do surveys, or are you trying to approach some of the former customers and why did you buy this house? I mean, are you trying to get some of that data as well?
I would definitely do surveys if they're not already there, but let's see. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. It's very, very interesting. I love that you start a new job tomorrow. That's so exciting to talk about someone who's just on the verge to do something new. So it's just really interesting. So what's your advice to other CMOs out there?
I think my best advice is to be a team player.
Yeah.
I think the best performance comes out of working within a great management group that really align 100% around, the goals and just help each other getting there. And that's also what is most fun, really, in working together. So I think this whole thing about creating a great team and being part of a great team is important.
Lisbet, what is a good CMO?
I think the key of being a great CMO is being part of a great management group that has a strong vision, both short and long term, and can agree on priorities and goals. And then you start as a CMO looking at how do we in the marketing team support these priorities and goals. I think you can really help the entire organization by being the one that bring in the insights. What's going on in the market, what's the position of the brand, what trends should we be working with, and what is happening with consumer behavior, because that is also changing rapidly at the moment. And then I think you also have a task in setting your team and decide whether you want to hire specialists and having many specialists sort of in-house, or whether you want to go and bring in partners and having agencies attached. That's also a big decision to make. You have to understand the essence of brand building, which is essential when you work with a brand that has to function long term. For me, that's a little different because often I have worked early on with sort of a film brand, a director brand, an author brand. It's been a little different in a way in working more with a product brand, if you know what I mean. So I think that's very interesting, the whole brand building part. And then I think today also consumer trust is just essential. We talked a little bit about it early on when we discussed, how much can marketing actually create of a success if the product isn't there. And we just can't. And if you are distrustful, or you oversell, or you greenwash, or if you're not being authentic, then you can be in really, really big trouble.
At the end of the day, the house is going to have its quality. At the end of the day, the movie has to
Absolutely.
deliver what people are expecting. I mean, you can sell, you can market, you can do a lot of stuff to get those people into the room, but at the end of the day, the product has to deliver. And
exactly. Yeah. And again, I think the whole consumer ambassador focus and just understanding how important the word of mouth is, no matter what product or service you're working with, is essential. So that's something I'm very focused on.
Can you elaborate on consumer ambassador and how you work with them?
I think this is something also I learned from the film industry. Really, is how big a driver the word of mouth is. If a film doesn't get the word of mouth it needs, it will die basically within a very, very short time span. I mean, especially these days with so many, news travels so fast. I mean, even before a film sometimes hits cinema, it will already have earned sort of distrust because, the chatting about it is poor. So I think I've learned the hard way how important the word of mouth is, and that you can just convey into any industry you're working with consumers. Like, you have to deliver on product, and the messaging around the product has to align with the expectations.
But do you identify consumer ambassadors and work with them as influencers, or do you find someone who's already a fan of the product or the film and you use their voice, or how do you collaborate with them? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think having you can definitely work with influencers, but I mean, when they're sponsored, you can say, of course, I think it's important if you do work with influencers that there is an authenticity in the choice of influencer and the product. That they, even if it's a sponsored relationship, that they can truly feel that they're behind the product. I mean, if they're not, it doesn't work. But you can't really, sort of the general public opinion, you can't really, you can't control. I mean, you can't control word of mouth, and sometimes things will receive poor word of mouth, and you don't understand it because you think actually it's a great film or it's a great book, but it's important. Mm.
Lisbet, it's been absolutely a pleasure speaking to you. It's good to catch up again. Thank you so much. And let's see if we can maybe talk in 3 months and how the start of the new job is. Yeah,
that would be great, Thomas. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. At the end of each episode, we always bring in Zane. Zane is our producer in the background who is here to make us sound and look good. And it's always good to hear what Zane thinks about today's episode. So what are your thoughts, Zane?
This was an exciting episode to listen to. I really enjoyed a lot of what Lisbet had to say, particularly about taking the kind of brand creation ethos that she found in the film industry and bringing it into marketing in general. Definitely like making marketing part of the development of a product.
That was interesting. It was. That was surprising to me because in the film industry, we did that. That is true. And it was part of this whole process you did. And taking that to other industries, I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and kind of using organization structure as part of the marketing tool, making sure that everyone involved kind of believes in it, but also has a part in marketing it.
Yes, and also has, as you said, touch point throughout the whole thing. So they don't get to hear about, hey, it's 3 weeks before the film comes out, the book comes out. Now you get to know about it. So you're already involved in the early stages and can, of course, come with your opinion, have a collaborative talk on it.
Because I'd never really thought of film in that sense of being like a brand creation machine, because it's really what it is, because it's you're creating a brand that then has to exist by itself after you're done marketing it.
Yep.
And ideally, that's what a business would be, and that's what a product would be, is like you're creating the hype and then the product carries it carries it forward. So I think, that's really interesting and kind of working that organizational structure into marketing, because a lot of the people that we've interviewed on this podcast have said that like the key to success in marketing is making sure that everyone has that same message and that same kind of driving force.
No, it's true. It's true. We've had talks on previous episodes on the sales and marketing, how they collaborate, how crucial it is for them to collaborate. And by doing it is at the early stage and brings it all in, it makes everyone a key player in it. I think I like where she's coming from that.
The other thing she said that touched on it with me, and like this will be no surprise to listeners of this podcast or to you and I, that working with culture is still business. Like it's still like working on a film can sound really exciting and creative, but you still got to pay attention to the numbers side of things. Of and I think that is where Lisbet said the numbers come first, because they have to support the story. If you bring a story and the numbers don't support it, you have to let that story go and find another story.
As she said that with a great definitive numbers. There was no doubt when she said that. It was really like that. I also like that the way she's very calm. I mean, she's excited and she's not worried at all. She's so excited about starting a new job tomorrow. So, the numbers, absolutely. And then, maybe the story a little bit, but definitely the numbers. So,
I mean, the story is important, but again, like if it's not supported, you have to let it go. I think that's a big part of Lisbet's ethos and why she's so optimistic is it's like, if it's not working, we'll find something better. Yeah.
Kill your darlings, get rid of it, move on to the next one. Keep trying. Yeah,
it was a very interesting interview.
Yeah, no, I like it, and it's so good too. As I said in the episode, I just like that hasn't started yet, so we can get to that whole discussion phase before that. So maybe we'll follow up in about 3 months and see.
Fingers
what happens.
crossed, she's still as optimistic then.
Please notice how she said and I says that at the end of the day, the product has to be good, right?
Absolutely,
so we have all tried to sell and market films that were not that good, but we had to do it to get them out there. So just want to point that out.
Look, I think if the product engineers or whatever, they also have to listen to the marketing department. They have to be on board from the start.
This was good. It was good to talk to Lisbet again. Thanks, Zane.
Absolutely. Thank you.